The systemic perspective allows us to try, at least, to draw a profile of a human type more effective than the currently available types. More effective in what sense? We are increasingly confronted with issues that ultimately wrought in the impossible, currently, solution to an increasingly powerful and imperative need for global equilibrium, from time to time translated into development sustainability, eco-sustainability, equity of the distribution of wealth, and in many other ways yet. The theme, of course, is in the end that of the survival of the species, mediated by the survival of the individual subjects of the species Homo sapiens. Certainly not a new theme. As not new is the frame in which today the question is framed, although certainly different from the frame of only 100 years ago. 100 years are nothing. Our species, as it is known, makes its appearance some millions of years ago. But in less than 100 years, spontaneously, conditions have emerged that have changed hopelessly and probably irreversibly the direction of the research of an acceptable solution to the inescapable question of survival. I stress the acceptable solution because, obviously, we can certainly consider the extermination of half the current human population as a solution which would at least temporarily balance the relationship between resources needs and resources availability. Solution this that I don't find acceptable, not just for a passionate and irreducible feeling of belonging to the species and love for my so-called similar, feeling completely unknown to me, as they are, I believe, unknown to all of us, being such affections and feelings reserved to one's own present communities of belonging and to one's own families in the best of cases. I cannot find acceptable the option of extermination, among others not less unacceptable, because that solution presents the undeniable characteristic of stopping, if not of frank regression, of our possible evolution. Evolution that, according to the judgment of authoritative scholars, from the genetic point of view, for our species, has been arrested for some tens of thousands of years, and which doesn't present a significant probability of recovery in the future. Just as, beyond the enormous differences we can find in the instrument we use, as individuals and as a community, to meet the imperative need to survive, the ways of governance and self-governance of individuals and communities. Ways of governance and self-governance that we can judge without even the need for in-depth analysis and further evidence, not only as certainly respectful of genetic dictation, but today, without any doubt, as excessively bent to genetic dictation and blind to the evidence of the outdated necessity of such bending. In short, we are no longer obliged, in order to survive, as individuals, as a community and as a species, to blindly obey, for example, the compulsion of the appropriation and accumulation of resources, first among all genetically inherited determinants. Yet there is no community that doesn't obey, directly or indirectly, this imperative. Even we are no longer obliged, necessarily, just to make another example, to entrust the rearing and education of the offspring to the biological parents, and, again, there is no community that doesn't obey directly or indirectly this imperative. Despite knowing, if not told many of us, that predominantly the effects of the first and second example of obedience are nefarious. Obedient and convergent ordinations on a human type configuration we call Homo sapiens, both of which are unacceptably inadequate and incompatible with the identification of an acceptable evolutionary response to the question I summarily indicated at the opening. While the evolution of our species has long been genetically halted, on the other hand remains open the way of an evolution not dictated and fed exclusively by DNA, but fed and judiciously guided by the knowledge laboriously conquered in our meeting with our environments, in our life on this planet. While Homo Systemicus is not genetically different from Homo sapiens, on the other hand it is very different for the use that is able to make of its own knowledge, for the wisdom that it managed to use in building and supporting forms of government and self-governance of the life of individuals, of the communities, and, in the end, of the species. Almost everything that is now recognized as useful knowledge for our survival must be subjected to profound revision. It is necessary to purify it from the slag and poisons deposited by Homo sapiens, in order to be usable by Homo Systemicus. We will recognize the Homo Systemicus, distinguishing him from the progenitor Homo sapiens, not for detectable somatic differences, but for the different use of knowledge not blindly bent on the dictation of our common genetic inheritance.